Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day and happy Inauguration Day. Okay, speaking of Inauguration Day, Donald Trump is being inaugurated as president. And with that, let's talk about tariffs. Donald Trump has been talking a lot about tariffs. Greg actually spoke about these in his video. And let's talk about them. Why is Donald Trump wanting to talk about tariffs, bringing tariffs on? And what would they do to you, to me, to our country? Well, to begin with, let's take Donald Trump out of the picture. Let's just talk about tariffs because who knows what Donald Trump's going to do? He's the self proclaimed negotiator, and we already know he is using these tariffs to uh, help him negotiate with other countries on creating a better playing field for jobs here in the United States. So let's take him out of the picture. Let's just talk about tariffs. What do they mean? Why would you institute tariffs? All right, here's what a tariff is. It's a tax on another country. So let's say the United States produces something. They make a widget. Now all of a sudden China comes in and they sell that same widget for less money. How can they do that? Well, they don't have a minimum wage. They pay their employees much less. They artificially manipulate their currency to be less than the dollar. So then they can create the same widget and bring them in the United States, sell them here. The consumers buy the cheaper product and the American company goes away. It either moves its factories over to China or it just goes out of business. And so go the jobs. So that's why you want to create a tariff. The tariff then taxes China so that they're now taxed at a rate that makes, and China then passes that tax back to the consumer, and it makes the widget the same cost as the American widget. So it evens the playing field. All right, then what happens? Well, for the consumer, that's bad, right? Why is it bad? Because our costs now go up. What we used to be able to pay this is now we're paying this. Now that's bad. So why would you do that? Well, because now China is motivated to bring some jobs here. Apple, for example. Apple is an American company. They sell extremely expensive cell phones, about $1,000 a piece, but they make them in China. They make them in China in factories where there is no minimum wage. They've got nets around the buildings to prevent their employees from committing suicide and end it all. So if the cost to make your cell phone in China costs as much as it is here, well, then Apple might be motivated to start making iPhones here in the United States. What would that do? Well, now you've got jobs here. And here we do have a minimum wage. We have standards, we have safety protocols. You can't just put a net around a building to take care of your employees. So it creates jobs. Those jobs are now paying good wages. So then that starts to offset the inflation because now you've got more employees making more money who can now pay for that more expensive thing. That's the logic. That's the rationale. Now, let's take the economics out of it. Let's paint a different picture because sometimes I start getting into the weeds with economics, but let's actually look at some weeds. Let's look at a gardener. It's the same kind of principle. Let's say you're a gardener and you walk in and your garden is overgrown. It's a mess and it's not healthy. What do you have to do? You've got to prune. Is the pruning good or bad? Well, it depends on your perspective. At first, it's bad. You go in with destruction. You start hurting these plants, trimming them back, pulling weeds, killing things. And then what happens to the garden? Well, at first, it's ugly, right? Like with tariffs, at first, it's going to be ugly. With a garden, after a fresh pruning, it can be ugly. But what happens is that over time, what you've done is you've created a healthier environment. Now these plants can grow and flourish. And then eventually the goal for pruning is to have a beautiful garden. Well, that's the goal for tariffs. That's why you would institute it. If you're just looking short term, it's not worth it. It doesn't make sense. But in the long term, it can make sense if done correctly. So what does this mean for us? Well, we don't know. Let's bring Donald Trump back into the picture. Like I said at the beginning, we don't know what he's going to do. He may not even have to use tariffs because he's threatened them so much. He might, though. And either way, inflation right now is continuing to be sticky. It just will not get down to that 2% level. Like we said when Janet Yellen was initially saying, don't worry about the inflation, it's transitory. Well, 5 years later, we still have it. And that's how Greg and I have been investing, with the anticipation that inflation is stickier than the talking heads are saying it is. And you're doing really well. We're keeping an eye on it. Hopefully, inflation won't continue out years into the road. If it does, we got you covered. You're going to be fine. All right. With that, you all have a great Monday. Oh, if you're watching the Ohio Notre Dame football game, let's go Notre Dame. All right. You guys take care. Bye bye.